first trimester, the choice to end pregnancy was entirely up to the mother. In the second trimester, the government could regulate but not ban abortion in order to protect the mother's health. In the third trimester, the state could prohibit abortion to protect the fetus that could survive outside the womb, except when the mother's health is endangered. Justices Byron White and William Rehnquist dissented. They basically held the argument of privacy went far beyond the intentions of the constitutional framers, an argument that could signal the grounds for challenges to Roe. The two justices also stated the court's decision did not stick to the specific facts of this case because Roe was not in her first trimester at the time of the litigation. Public opinion was quickly shifting. In August 1972, Americans opposed legalized abortion, 46 to 42%. But by April 1973, it was 52 to 41 in favor. In the years since, Roe's been modified but not overturned. A notable example was in 1992, a case called Planned Parenthood versus Casey. For all intents and purposes, this is the new standard by which abortion cases are judged. The focus this time wasn't privacy, it was roadblocks, which had been intentionally set up to make it harder to get an abortion. In a 5-4 ruling, the court said restrictions are unconstitutional if they place an undue burden on a woman. Support for Roe v. Wade remains strong. A Kaiser Family Foundation poll in June 2018 found that 67% of Americans do not want the Supreme Court to overturn the ruling, while 29% do. The question now, of course, is what the Supreme Court will do with the solid conservative majority.
Let's dig a little deeper into this with Carolyn Shapiro. She's a professor of law and the co-director of Chicago-Kent College of Law's Institute on the Supreme Court of the United States. She also previously clerked for Justice Stephen Breyer and has argued cases in front of the Supreme Court. Carolyn, good to have you with us. So, first of all, what's been your reaction to what we heard in court yesterday? What do you think is going to happen to Roe versus Wade?
Well, I think, first of all, there's no question that the court is going to uphold the Mississippi law that bans abortion after 15 weeks, which is a significant, all by itself, a significant change in the law. But listening to the justices yesterday, I think it's very likely that they will just outright overrule Roe versus Wade. There was an enormous amount of hostility to the opinion itself, to Casey versus Planned Parenthood, the 1992 decision that reaffirmed Roe versus Wade. Incredible amount of skepticism from the conservative justices about the underpinnings of that law and about whether or not they should, at this point, overrule it.
As we mentioned, you've worked with Justice Breyer, part of the liberal wing of the court. Let's listen to a part of what he had to say yesterday.
There will be inevitable efforts to overturn it. Of course there will. Feelings run high. And it is particularly important to show what we do in overturning the case is grounded in principle and not social pressure, not political pressure.
What do you make of what he was saying there? What is it he's trying to do in his statements there?
Well, he's actually reading in part from the Casey opinion, but what he's trying to say to his fellow justices is that if we overrule precedent because it's unpopular, if we overrule precedent because people don't like it, that's not a principled reason to do it. That we have to actually explore the underpinnings of the what's called stare decisis, which is the idea that precedent is presumptively correct, and that we have to look and think hard about issues like how has this Roe versus Wade and Casey, have they shaped society? How are people relying on their ability to obtain abortions if they need it? And that's not an analysis, for the most part, that the conservative justices were interested in engaging in.
Stare decisis is something we heard talked about a lot during confirmation hearings, most recently for Amy Coney Barrett. Now, Carolyn, we saw protesters from both sides of the debate gathered outside the court yesterday. It's a hugely divisive issue from a social standpoint, a legal standpoint, and has been for decades. What could be the implications for abortion rights if Roe v. Wade is overruled or weakened? What do you think then happens next throughout this country?
The first thing that's going to happen is that there are numerous states that have as indicated in the intro, numerous states have trigger laws that will immediately outlaw abortion starting very early in pregnancy or entirely. We'll also see an enormous amount of efforts in states that don't have those laws to enact them. We'll also see some push in the other direction. Some states, including Illinois, where I live, have very robust laws protecting reproductive rights, but it will become a battle in the state legislatures. But it won't be limited to the state legislatures. It will also be a battle in Congress. There will be efforts both to outlaw abortion nationwide and possibly to protect abortion rights nationwide. And then if those laws were to pass, they would end up going back to the Supreme Court.
I mean, Carolyn, this has been an issue that for decades has often motivated conservative voters, those who oppose abortion rights. Do you think that's going to change in the next year as we head into next year's midterms?
I think if the court overrules Roe versus Wade, or makes it clear that they hollowed it out to such a point that it's not meaningful anymore, that will be enormously motivating for Democratic voters. And for people who are not necessarily strongly associated with the Democratic Party, but who care a lot about abortion rights.
Carolyn Shapiro, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it this morning.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app. Breaking news tonight, New York now the fourth state to confirm cases of the Omicron variant as President Biden unveils his winter COVID battle plan. First California, now New York, Colorado, and Minnesota. One case involving a man who recently traveled to New York City and attended a large convention. Another, a woman who was recently in southern Africa. Many of the cases involving vaccinated people with mild symptoms. It comes as the president outlines new steps to combat COVID this winter. Boosters, free tests, and new restrictions on travel. Also tonight, Congress racing to avoid a government shutdown. Moments ago, the House passing a short-term funding bill, but some Senate Republicans threatening to block it over President Biden's vaccine mandate. New fallout from that deadly school shooting in Michigan. The threats that led 60 schools to close today. The arrest in the deadly shooting of a music legend's wife at their Beverly Hills home. NFL star Antonio Brown suspended. The league saying he wasn't honest about his vaccination status. The race to deliver for the holidays, our exclusive inside Amazon's new state-of-the-art Air Hub. And bet your bottom dollar she's going to shine tonight. The 12-year-old star of NBC's musical Annie Live.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening. The drumbeat for booster shots for over 100 million eligible Americans grows louder tonight as more Omicron cases emerge here in the U.S. and around the world. The latest U.S. cases include Colorado, Minnesota, and New York. But health officials reminding us it's still the dominant Delta variant driving a rise in new COVID infections. With signs more Americans are rolling up their sleeves, President Biden rolling out a series of new strategies today to combat the COVID spread and meet the still unspecified Omicron threat, including an expanded booster campaign, family vaccination clinics, free at-home testing, and new testing rules for travelers arriving from abroad. Kelly O'Donnell leads us off tonight from the White House.
Tonight, expected, but still unnerving. More cases of the Omicron variant detected inside the U.S. New York officials calling a news conference this evening to announce Omicron is there. Add Colorado to California and Minnesota. Today, officials identified Omicron in a Denver area woman who returned after a tour in southern Africa. She was fully vaccinated but had not received a booster.
She is experiencing mild symptoms and is isolating at home.
Today in Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz tried to offer reassurance.
It's not surprising that it showed up.
That case involves a Minneapolis area man, vaccinated and boosted, who had traveled to New York City, where he attended an anime convention last month, held at the Javits Center, the very place that had once served as a COVID field hospital. Convention goers urged to get tested. New York Governor Kathy Hochul.
We do anticipate there'll be more cases, but to the extent that they are mild, we'll address them. This is not cause for alarm.
From the president today, a visit to the National Institutes of Health to reboot his plan for winter COVID.
We're going to fight this variance with science and speed, not chaos and confusion.
One new benefit, The costs of in-home COVID tests will be reimbursable through your private health insurance, expected to begin in late January. Plus, 50 million free tests will be distributed to community sites and rural areas. A change in travel requirements. All passengers flying to the U.S. from foreign countries must have a negative COVID test within 24 hours, down from 3 days. Establishing new family vaccination clinics so children, adults, and seniors can get their shots together. A milestone today. The White House says nearly 2.2 million doses went into arms, including more than 1 million booster shots, the largest 24-hour total in more than 6 months. As science learns more about the risks of the Omicron variant, doctors warn the winter season is already a dangerous time.
I'm very worried. We're very much in the thick of this. We haven't gotten done with the Delta surge. We're going to lose 10,000 Americans week over week, well into the early spring.
Kelly, what more have you learned about the Omicron cases that popped up in New York?
Well, New York City's mayor and governor have appeared together saying they have 5 cases. They believe they are all mild, some connected to travel. And a White House official tells me that the new requirement for a test that is negative for foreign travel, those flying into the United States from abroad, will go into effect on Monday, December 6th. You must have that within 24 hours of getting on a plane. Lester?
Kelly O'Donnell at the White House. Thank you. Tonight, Congress is just hours away from another deadline to avoid a government shutdown. And while moments ago a plan cleared the House, a new showdown over President Biden's vaccine mandates could derail it. Garrett Haake is at the Capitol with the latest.
Tonight, Congress lurching towards a government shutdown, the leaders of both parties now scrambling to avoid.
First of all, they'd shut down government, and then they'd shut down science.
It only creates chaos and uncertainty.
Federal government funding runs out Friday at midnight. Congressional leaders have a deal in place to extend it until mid-February. But a small group of Senate Republicans say they'll derail that deal unless they get a vote on defunding President Biden's vaccine and testing mandate for businesses, currently blocked by federal courts.
I don't want to shut down the government. The only thing I want to shut down is Congress funding enforcement of an immoral, unconstitutional vaccine mandate.
I'll be doggone if I'm going to get rolled on this right now without a fight.
The group's stalling strategy frustrating their fellow Republican lawmakers who have slammed the plan as highly unlikely to work.
Ultimately, we're going to fund the government, and I don't see this hostage as one that we should take.
But leaving President Biden unbothered.
There is a plan in place unless somebody decides to be totally erratic. I don't think thank you.
Friday's deadline was supposed to be the easiest for Congress to meet this month. Lawmakers still have to raise the debt ceiling, and Democrats hope to pass the president's massive climate and social spending bill by Christmas. Lester?
Garrett Haake, thank you. There are alarming new developments after that Michigan school shooting that left 4 students dead. Threats of more violence leading some 60 schools to shut down. Megan Fitzgerald is there. Megan, what do we know?
Well, Lester, on the heels of Tuesday's shooting, school districts across the state have received hundreds of threats. So out of an abundance of caution, they closed for the rest of the week. But the Oakland County Sheriff being very clear tonight, saying that so far they've not received any credible threats. The prosecutor here announcing that within the next 24 hours, she is expecting to make an announcement on whether or not the suspect's parents will also be facing charges. Lester?
Megan, thank you. In California tonight, a suspect has been arrested in the murder of Jacqueline Avant, a philanthropist who was the wife of music executive Clarence Avant. Police in Beverly Hills say the suspect is a 29-year-old parolee who accidentally shot himself in the foot during a burglary. 6 weeks after that deadly shooting on a movie set in New Mexico, actor Alec Baldwin is speaking out about it in an interview. With more on that, here's Miguel Almaguer.
Though the official investigation into the deadly shooting on the set of Rust is likely weeks from completion, tonight Alec Baldwin with a surprising claim, speaking to ABC News.
Well, the trigger wasn't pulled. I didn't pull the trigger.
So you never pulled the trigger?
No. I would never point a gun at anyone and pull a trigger. Never.
Clips of the interview do not include Baldwin's explanation for how the gun went off, but the revelation seems to contradict witness statements and what the actor himself told responding officers.
I think back. and I think of what could I have done.
Baldwin was in costume preparing for a scene like this one, pulling a Colt 45 from his holster when the fatal shot was fired.
Because this is a two-step process to fire this weapon, how difficult is it to accidentally discharge it?
It's nearly impossible. The fact that I would accidentally be able to cock this gun, followed by accidentally pressing the trigger, this is starting to build up to be statistically very unlikely.
With no charges filed yet, investigators told us during closed-door briefings, determining how live rounds got onto the set will be critical.
Someone put a live bullet in a gun, a bullet that wasn't even supposed to be on the property.
Search warrants have been executed at one supplier who provided ammunition used on the set. The FBI is also helping to trace where the live round came from that wounded the film's director, Joel Souza, and killed cinematographer Helena Hutchins.
She was someone who was loved by everyone who worked with and liked by everyone who worked with and admired.
Tonight, Baldwin breaks his silence, but questions still swirl. Miguel Almaguer, NBC News.
Tonight, one of the NFL's biggest stars, Antonio Brown, has been suspended, accused of faking his COVID vaccine status. The Tampa Bay wide receiver was suspended without pay for 3 games, along with Buccaneers safety Mike Edwards. Free agent wide receiver John Franklin III was also disciplined. In just 60 seconds, the rare heat gripping much of the country tonight, and the calendar says it's December. Dozens of record-high temperatures are likely to be broken as an unusual heat wave grips the western half of the country. Highs are running 20 to 30 degrees above normal. Kansas City hit a record for this date at 71 degrees. Others tying or beating records include Tulsa, Omaha, Billings, and Wichita. Things begin to cool down tomorrow. Overseas tonight, tensions between Russia and Ukraine are at a fever pitch, with fears growing of another Russian invasion as its forces mass on the border. The U.S. Secretary of State is trying to head off a conflict. Andrea Mitchell has more.
In Stockholm today, Secretary of State Tony Blinken meeting with Moscow's veteran Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, seeking a diplomatic off-ramp to the emerging crisis between Ukraine and Russia. With tens of thousands of Russian troops massing on Ukraine's border, Blinken says Vladimir Putin could quickly invade Ukraine for the first time since 2014. If he does, the U.S. and its NATO allies warn Moscow will face drastic economic and political sanctions.
It's now on Russia to de-escalate the current tensions by reversing the recent troop buildup, returning forces to normal peacetime positions, and refraining from further intimidation and attempts to destabilize Ukraine.
The U.S. wants Russia to back off the border and return to a 2015 ceasefire agreement they accuse Russia of violating. But Russia demands that NATO stop expanding toward Russia, including taking steps toward accepting Ukraine as a new member, claiming Ukraine is threatening Russia's national security, an idea Blinken calls laughable. So far, the two sides are talking past each other. Blinken says it's likely Presidents Biden and Putin will hold a virtual meeting in the coming days, looking for a way out of the crisis.
The Secretary of State also heard from Israel's Prime Minister today, asking the U.S. to quit the Iran nuclear talks. Blinken says the U.S. will know in a day or two whether Iran is serious, but will not let Iran continue to build its nuclear program and drag its feet on negotiations. Lester?
Andrea Mitchell in Stockholm tonight. Thanks. Growing concern about the safety and whereabouts of a Chinese tennis star has prompted drastic action against China by the Women's Tennis Association. Janice Mackey-Freyer is in China tonight.
Tonight, citing fears over the safety of Chinese tennis player Peng Shuai, a dramatic move by the Women's Tennis Association, suspending its tournaments in China.
This is about what's right for women, especially around the issues of sexual assault.
Tennis star Novak Djokovic praising the WTA's decision as bold and courageous.
We, as a tennis community, need to stand together, and so I support it.
As the International Olympic Committee revealed, they had a second video call with Peng just yesterday, saying they're using quiet diplomacy with China. For weeks, Peng has been out of public view since a letter was posted to her social media account accusing a former Chinese Communist Party official of sexual assault, Serena Williams among those who demanded an investigation. The Grand Slam doubles champion then reappeared in videos linked to state media Twitter accounts, where she is seen but not heard. Chinese officials tonight hitting back, criticizing the WTA for politicizing sports. WTA players have plenty to lose. The prize money from the past 9 tournaments totaled more than $30 million.
I hope that the Chinese authorities will do the right thing.
The WTA says it expects an investigation into Peng Shuai's allegations, though Chinese officials have yet to fully acknowledge the controversy or why there is concern for her in the first place. Lester?
Up next, your package times millions. Our exclusive inside look at how Amazon makes it all work in the race to deliver.
Is that fear I smell?
Do not hunt to kill.
Sharp blade, sharp mind. Sharp blade, sharp mind.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.
Good morning, I'm Savannah Sellers.
And I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, arrival. This morning, the very first case of the Omicron variant has now been identified in the U.S. The CDC announcing a traveler had returned to California from South Africa last week and tested positive just days later. The individual was fully vaccinated and only experiencing mild symptoms, which the CDC says are improving. Dr. Anthony Fauci once again stressing the importance of getting your shot.
We know what we need to do to protect people. Get vaccinated. If you're not already vaccinated, get boosted.
This morning, how the Biden administration is responding as it prepares to roll out a plan to combat the variant. Waiting game, tense scenes outside of the Supreme Court yesterday. Demonstrators on both sides confronted each other as justices heard arguments in what's considered the biggest challenge to abortion rights in decades. The future of Roe versus Wade now in the balance. How the 9 justices signaled they would rule on the landmark case out of Mississippi. Day in court, a community in mourning as the 15-year-old suspect in that deadly Michigan high school shooting is formally charged as an adult with murder and terrorism. Death toll rising, a 4th student now dead. New information we're learning about what happened inside Oxford High School just hours before the incident. Also this morning, bird is the word. In the age of pandemic shortages and supply chain woes, chicken tenders might be the very last grocery store staple you'd think would be in short supply. They might soon be forced to cough up a little extra dough for dinner. We'll tell you what's behind the price hike and how the big chicken chains are responding. And swing and a miss. Baseball fans won't be too thrilled with this one. Months of labor negotiations between the MLB and its players union have led to this, a lockout. It's the league's first work freeze in decades. So what does that mean for the upcoming season? And all those high-profile, multi-million-dollar contracts that have just been inked, we'll bring you the inside baseball. Good to have you with us on this Thursday morning.
Absolutely. I also noted how I even wrote it down, called chicken tenders a grocery store staple.
For some, they are. Not for me, but for some they are. We buy them sometimes. All right. Good to have you with us. We do want to begin with the first case of the Omicron variant in the United States.
Yeah, that's right. Now that Omicron is here, the White House is stepping up its plan to fight COVID, and it will impact foreign travelers the most this holiday season. NBC News correspondent Tom Costello has more.
Yeah, Savannah and Joe, good morning. You know, top health officials say it was really only a matter of time before the Omicron variant appeared in the United States. That's now happened. Later today, here at the NIH, President Biden will lay out his administration's winter response plan. That will include extending the mask mandate on planes, in airports, buses, and trains. And also today, for the first time, we're hearing from somebody overseas who has experienced Omicron firsthand. This morning, the Biden administration is taking new and immediate action to fight the spread of the Omicron variant, extending the federal mask requirement in all airports, planes, trains, and buses through mid-March, and mandating stricter testing for every international traveler, including Americans arriving from foreign airports starting next week.
The new regulation, if you want to call it that, is that anybody and everybody who's coming into the country needs to get a test within 24 hours of getting on the plane to come here.
The CDC now confirming the first U.S. case of Omicron. A resident of San Francisco who returned from South Africa on November 22nd, then started showing symptoms. The individual self-quarantining now, and all close contacts have so far tested negative.
They had received a full dose of the Moderna vaccine, but no booster. They had mild symptoms and thankfully have now recovered. This is cause for concern, but it is also certainly not a cause for us to panic.
Now the CDC is ordering airlines to share contact information for anyone who's traveled from that southern African region for future contact tracing. This Air China flight crew taking no chances at LAX, wearing full hazmat suits. The U.S. has already banned non-Americans from flying in from southern Africa, now an Omicron hot zone. And for the first time, we're hearing from a patient overseas who's been diagnosed with Omicron. Cardiologist Dr. Elad Moar, who's quarantining at home in Israel.
I had high temperature, muscle ache, sore throat.
He believes he caught Omicron last week in London while attending a 1,200-person medical conference where masks were only recommended. He attributes his mild symptoms to his being vaccinated and having a booster.
My case strengthened the need fully vaccinating, including a booster of all population.
The Biden administration says encouraging everybody to get boosted is a top priority. To do that, it is encouraging employers to give people time off to go get boosted. It's also encouraging healthcare providers to talk to parents about vaccinating their kids, and also it's going to be allowing for free at-home test kits, expanding free at-home test kits nationwide. Joe and Savannah, back to you.
Tom Costello, thank you so much.
Dr. Megan Ranney joins us now. She's an emergency physician and associate professor at Brown University. She's also the co-founder of Get Us PPE. Dr. Ranney, always good to have you with us. So given that this Omicron case in San Francisco is someone who we know is fully vaccinated and they're showing mild symptoms, can we glean much from that? And what does it tell us about vaccine effectiveness, or do we need to see a lot more cases?
So really, this is just one case. At this point, this is anecdote, not evidence. This does confirm some of the data that we're getting out of South Africa, which is just as with the rest of COVID, if you get a case and you're unvaccinated, you are at significantly higher risk of severe illness, hospitalization, or death. But as with everything around Omicron, I'm cautioning folks to take a breath and wait a week or two until we know a little bit more.
That's really good advice. We like to hear that. Take a breath. All right, now the White House is ramping up testing and contact tracing for travelers who are coming into the U.S. How important are those measures in preventing Omicron from spreading here rapidly? How helpful can that be?
So they're certainly important, and I wish that they had been put in place months ago. Even more effective would be requiring vaccination for everyone who comes into the U.S., whether they are a foreign national or a U.S. citizen, and requiring testing a few days after arrival here.
And Dr. Ranney, masks have been part of our daily lives for nearly 2 years now. You're one of our PPE experts. Should we upgrade our mask to a surgical one or N95 if you haven't been using one lately in the wake of this variant? Or we wait for more answers, or do you think a cloth mask is still effective if you prefer that?
So this is the time to upgrade your mask if you haven't already. Certainly wear a surgical mask. If you are going to wear a cloth mask, make sure it's one of the ones that has been well tested, has high filtration, and has good fit. K95s, KF94s, and N95s are wonderful, but only if they are the real thing. A lot of the masks that are being sold on Amazon and elsewhere right now are counterfeit. I recommend people go to Project N95, which is a nonprofit that certifies the accuracy and filtration of popularly available masks before making a decision on what to buy.
Project N95. All right, good advice. Dr. Ranney, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Now to a major battle at the Supreme Court over the future of Roe v. Wade. In oral arguments yesterday, a majority of members of the conservative-leaning court indicated their support for upholding a Mississippi law that would ban abortions after 15 weeks, directly threatening the almost 50-year-old landmark ruling. NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams joins us now. Hi, Pete. Good morning.
And for that reason, it now appears that the nation's legal landscape on abortion is likely to undergo a profound change in the coming months. This is based on the comments of the Supreme Court justices at yesterday's oral argument. It would be the biggest shift on abortion rights in nearly 50 years.
Opponents of abortion rights who gathered outside the Supreme Court appear to have something to cheer about after a heated courtroom argument. A majority of the court's conservatives appear likely to uphold a Mississippi law that would ban abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy. That would undercut nearly 5 decades of rulings that say a state cannot ban abortion before a fetus is viable about 24 weeks into the pregnancy. Chief Justice John Roberts suggested he would uphold a Mississippi law without explicitly overturning Roe.
If it really is an issue about choice, why is 15 weeks not enough time?
Even so, such a ruling would undercut Roe, and the court's liberals warned that would seem like a decision based on politics.
Will this institution survive the stench that this creates in the public perception that the Constitution and its reading are just political acts?
It's unclear whether the court will go the whole way and overturn Roe completely. But even if it doesn't, doing away with the rule that says states cannot ban abortion before viability could embolden as many as half the states to pursue local laws that would make abortion illegal. Some already have bans on the books that would go into effect the moment the court's abortion precedents were overturned.
It's hard to think of something in the modern history of the United States that will be more epic than a ruling that either overrules or severely limits Roe versus Wade.